Here they are, James Ransone and Ty West.
Hi, guys. Good to see you. How are you?
Welcome. How's it going?
Welcome back.
What's going on?
What's going on? For having us.
Of course.
Put my headphones on here.
That's right. Headphones. New movie, In a Valley of Violence.
It's a great name.
Thank you.
It's in theaters, by the way, and on demand on Friday.
Yes, on Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the title is sort of a play on words a little bit in the sense that they are actually in a town that is known as the Valley of Violence, but I think it also kind of speaks to the movie is sort of about violence and how it affects people. So hopefully there's a little bit of a pretentious angle going to the title as well.
What was the movie something in the Company of Men? I'm thinking of it's different. I thought it had violence in the title, but then as I was asking that question,
I thought that's how you spent your evening.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly not how I spend my morning.
Did you design the title? Because I saw the movie last night. It's so good because it's a Western, and I liked it because it takes place over like 2 days.
Yeah,
like it's not this sort of long epic thing, but it gets very violent very quickly, which is nice.
Yeah, were you asking? You mean the title sequence you're talking about?
Yeah, the actual graphics of the title where you see the guy and his dog and the thing comes up.
That was Neil, right?
Yeah, a great artist named Neil Jonas who I've worked with a lot. The opening titles of this film are very like spaghetti western style, so they have a kind of Sergio Leone type vibe to them. But he did a really amazing job. And I feel like a lot of people, when you see the movie, there's an opening scene and then there's this title sequence that's like very bold, and you're kind of either in or you're out after that.
Right.
You'll either see that and be like, fuck this movie, or you'll be like, oh, I'm down for whatever this movie is going to do.
Which is kind of what you want, right?
That's the hope. So like prime people to go, all right, this is the right mindset to be in.
Yeah, that's what's cool when you allow like an artist to create the vision as opposed to a corporation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like if that was like a huge studio movie, they'd be like, absolutely fucking not these titles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, the producers seem to love to chime in.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yeah. All of our bosses, right?
Yeah.
Well, when did you guys find out that not only would James be in it, but also, like, first of all, that you'd be playing John Travolta's son?
Well, Ty and I have been friends for a while, and we were looking for something to do, and I had worked with Ethan on a couple of different things aside from Sinister, and we'd known each other for a while. He was like, hey, I think I'm going to make this Western with Ethan. I was like, oh, cool. And then he wrote it so fast that he's like, here, I wrote this part for you. And then John Travolta sort of finding out that he was going to do it sort of came after me, and I was like, holy shit, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't know when you first took it?
No. Well, I mean, because we had been friends for a while, he's like, hey, I wrote this thing for you. So I knew that I was going to do the movie, I think, before anybody else did.
Yeah.
You know?
You wrote, so was Ethan Hawke kind of down to do it?
Yeah.
Beforehand?
Well, what happened was I had an idea of what this movie was, and I was interested in Ethan maybe being in it. So I came to New York and met with Ethan, and he was doing Macbeth at Lincoln Center. And I kind of pitched him the idea for the movie, and he dug it. And I was like, well, when do you finish Macbeth? And he said, I'll be done in about 3 weeks. And I said, okay, when you wrap, I'm going to send you the script. And if you don't like it, then we never have to talk about it again. But if you do like it, let's make it. And he was like, cool, whatever. Went back to doing Macbeth. I went home, frantically wrote a script.
You had no script at all?
No, I just had the idea.
How long did it take you to write it?
3 weeks.
Jesus
So
Christ.
he thought you were being respectful of his art, like, wow, man, this guy won't interrupt my being Macbeth and with the script, and you're just like, I have fucking nothing to send you.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Good thing you didn't say, send it tonight, I have time.
I just want to polish it up before you, I want to make sure it's just right.
Yeah, because you were like, if he says he's not interested, I'm not going to bother writing this
Yes,
thing.
I mean, essentially that was it.
Yeah.
Because if he didn't want to do it, I didn't know how I would get the movie made, because a Western is sort of an esoteric thing to get made nowadays.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, if Ethan wants to do it, then there's a life for this movie. And so he wanted to do it. And after that, the producer, Jason Blum, was like, hey, what about John Travolta? And I was like, and he was like, because he read the script and loves it and wants to have dinner. And I was like, well, let's go have dinner with John Travolta and see what that's like. And it was weird because that's a surreal experience in its own right. But we went to dinner with John Travolta, and he was awesome. Like, he was so great and, like, so down to earth and totally understood the script. Got all the humor, because even though the movie's very violent, there's a lot of sort of, like, really, like, dark comedy in the movie. Yeah. And he got all of it. And he just totally understood the movie. It was really amazing to sit down with John Travolta and have him say all these things about the script that are like, well, that was, like, what was in my head when I wrote it. And he was just super enthusiastic to do it. So all of a sudden, it was this Ethan Hawke, John Travolta, James Ransone.
And how many rewrites were there? I mean, in 3 weeks, there's not a whole lot of time to go over things and redo them and go over them and redo them.
Well, that's kind of all I did for 3 weeks.
Okay.
And I typically do that. Like I wanted him to, like, that deadline was helpful for me because it forced me to be like, if I don't, like, my self-hatred is like, if I don't get it done in 3 weeks, I'd be failing. I'd be looking like an ass. So I have to get this done.
Yeah, to Ty's credit too, writing is the biggest nightmare in the entire world. I have always used the metaphor. It's like trying to masturbate on the observation deck of the Empire State Building. It's just
So you're saying it's easy and it's fun.
yeah. No, it's like it's windy and there's a lot of Asian tourists taking pictures of you. You can't get hard. Do you know what I mean? But it's impressive to watch somebody be like, I'm gonna sequester myself in my own home in like where I live, because a lot of writers I know who know they're going to dive in, they'll go to a cabin where there's no internet service. A lot of people really do that. So for him to be like, I'm going to write this thing, I'm going to write it in this amount of time, is pretty unusual for Hollywood.
Yeah, it's hard to do too, to make yourself right. Because for me, when I write, it has to come at a weird time or it has to hit me. I can't just sit down and go, okay, I got 3 weeks to do it. I'm awful under those circumstances.
But when it does hit you like that, you're able to do, I mean, you're a really productive person, but so are you able to then, when that hits you, just do it all? Because it's very hard for me to sustain that.
No, I have moments where I'm fighting. The computer's the worst. Being online is so hard. So I literally will be creative in between fucking jerk off jags. Like that's what it is. It's a matter of, okay, I have this hour where I feel creative and I'm not doing anything dirty. Take advantage of it.
Well, it's like empty mind, right? So it's like got to come through from some other thing, where it's your mind just becomes this clear thing for something to pour out of.
Yeah, when there's nothing filthy going into it, then all of a sudden the doors, then the exit is apparent and things can come out.
Right.
But otherwise, all the windows are open and just junk is flying in.
Right.
Do you have a wife or girlfriend?
No, I'm single.
I'm not asking you.
No.
Okay, because I was about to say you would have to explain like, hey, I'm not going to see you for a while.
Yeah,
I have to
it
go
definitely makes things weird. I mean, in the past, I've had that, and it's a strain for sure.
Yeah.
By the way, if I've been saying your name wrong, I've been saying Ransone. It's Ranson.
I don't know. Me and my brother talk about this all the time.
Oh, you
he's
do?
like,
Cool.
he's like, we may have been mispronounced. I come from a long line of white trash bricklayers. So, they've been here since like the 17th century, and nobody figured out how to buy property. You know?
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
so my family was the people that came over, and there were like two guys. And one was like, well, this is mine. And my family went, I guess I work for you now.
All right. So how do you say it?
Ranson.
Okay, that's how I'll say it. What did you go to South Africa for? I read that you went to South Africa.
I went to South Africa. Well, it wasn't just South Africa. It was Namibia, South Africa, and Mozambique. And I was there for almost a year for a television show in 2008 called Generation Kill. That was made by David Simon and Evan Wright and Ed Burns about a book that was originally I think like a 3 or 4 part story for Rolling Stone about the invasion of Iraq, like the initial invasion in 2003. So it was like a dramatization of a true story.
I remember that. It was great. We interviewed you for it. And one guy kept saying mustache.
Yeah.
That guy was the best.
Yeah, Lee Turgeson. Yeah, I remember being here with Lee. Yeah, totally.
I'm kind of fascinated by the whole process of getting this thing made. So
us too.
Yeah. Right? Because like you look at it and like we've known you for a while, and it's like, and then you end up getting to pull off a Western with these two guys. So is it that do you build up enough credibility that like Ethan Hawke will sit down with you, and then once you get him to sit down with you, then you got his name attached, then you can shop it around, then somebody will buy it. Like how does the process work at all?
That is sort of how it works, but in the case of this movie, well, one thing that's helpful, what I sort of learned is if you write a Western, like dudes want to be in Westerns. So it was easier to cast than, like I'd made horror movies before this, which are harder to cast because like everyone thinks a horror movie might be terrible. So like people don't mind being in a good horror movie, but nobody wants to be in a bad horror movie.
Right.
A Western, people are more like, well, this could be cool. This is sort of the dream, is to get to make a Western. So especially for like male actors, it was relatively easy. But Ethan had done 2 movies, The Purge and Sinister, with a producer named Jason Blum, and I had met him, and I was like, well, if Ethan wants to do the movie, would you do it? And he has a unique ability to get movies made pretty quickly as long as they're inexpensive. Mm-hmm. So as soon as Ethan wanted to do it, I just sort of went back to Jason and was like, look, it doesn't cost very much money, and he was like, all right, let's do it. And then as soon as Travolta got attached especially, it went very quickly.
Yeah,
How hard was he to get? Because meaning financially, he's obviously in a different price range probably than most guys. Just the rider and the trailers. Do they kind of forego a lot of that for a lower budget movie?
He was very cool with us. I think
Okay.
because he was really into this movie, and that was like that dinner I had with him. He really wanted to do it, and I think you just sit down, you talk to him, and you go like, "Look, here's the reality of what we can do, and I don't want to ask you to do something you don't want to do, but here's the reality. So could you bend the rules for us a little bit? And he was great. I mean,
Because the trailer, someone told me about Will Smith's trailer. It's like at the back of
The
a
gym.
Yeah.
He brings the big gym.
Yeah, it's like a whole thing, especially if you're in a city and you got to shut down streets. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah, but let me tell you something, man. It's not the 90s anymore. Like, that shit's... I mean, like, you maybe have, like, a couple of guys who can get away with that still, but I'd like to dispel the illusion here and now that it's easy to get anything made in Hollywood ever, even if you're... Yeah, I mean... That's the weird thing, and like we're entering this age of transparency, and really what it comes down to is that like the most successful directors, even the ones that have been making shit for a long time, that have made the studios a lot of money, are constantly spinning like 6 or 7 plates, and they're going to go with whichever one goes first, whichever one that somebody will give you the money for. That's the one that they're going to make. Do you know what I mean? And just that's across the board. And if you even do enough sort of like digging on that, like Scorsese's the same way. You know what I mean? It's like he might have like 3 or 4 or 5 scripts going, and then it's like whichever one is going to get the money first, that's the one they go shoot.
Yeah. That having been said, Travolta did have a very nice trailer.
But I'm just amazed. I know it's a weird question to ask about the trailers, but I mean, the amount of money that those things cost.
Well, if I remember correctly, he owns his.
He owns his own plane, too. He's smart.
He does. He flew to set.
Did he?
Yeah. It was pretty cool.
Did you get to go on the plane?
I didn't. I'd love to still do that, though. But
What is it, a 707?
I believe he flew a Challenger.
Well,
to the set.
he had 2, right? And he got rid of the bigger one, and then Qantas was the one who trained him, and they have like the best. So, like, if you actually fly with Travolta, he's like one of the best pilots to fly with because Qantas.
He has a crazy amount of hours. Like he's a fascinating person to talk to. I mean, that's mostly what we would talk about is like flying. Because I was like, when did you get in this? And it was like when he was very young. Like Welcome Back, Kotter young is when he got into flying.
Yeah, he's like a legitimate can carry passengers pilot.
Yeah. I think that for a while he was telling us that like once in a while Qantas would call him and ask him to like do like some PR trip, for like, and he would be the pilot.
Right.
Can you imagine getting on? You're like, this is your captain speaking.
You're like, oh no.
Like, that's weird. That sounds familiar.
It wouldn't be bad now, but if it was Vinnie Barbarino days, that'd be kind of disheartening. Oh shit.
I want face-off era pilot.
Yeah, I don't know how confident I feel with an actor flying me. Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden flies like, he's able to fly the band, and a lot of people don't. Jimmy Buffett can fly his own plane. There's a lot of those guys that just, I guess they want something just totally distracting from acting or whatever it is.
How do you, like at what point, when you're making the deal, are you like, yeah, but the point of this movie is I'm the director and the writer and the editor. Like I need all the responsibility put on me. Is that a negotiation? Is that something that you have to fight for? Because it's a lot of trust to put in somebody, right?
That's true. Well, since I wrote it, like that part is already started, and they kind of knew I wanted to direct it. So those two things combined isn't that difficult. Editing is abnormal. I'm an oddball that likes to do that. It's a little bit of a thing, but you just say like, this is important to me to do this, and it's not a huge thing, but it is a trouble. But the movie was a pretty small. I mean, it was not an overly expensive movie, so you get a little. If this was like $100 million movie, there's no way I'd be editing the movie.
What was Tangerine like, James? Because Tangerine was this movie that made kind of a big splash.
Yeah.
That was shot entirely on iPhones.
Oh my God, I forgot you were in. I loved that movie. Of course I saw it.
Did absolutely nothing for me. There's something about just the way that I was born naturally where I fell out of the narrative to what was exciting about that movie. I had worked with Sean Baker before, who actually met when my dog got hit by a car here in Chelsea. It was really weird. And he was there with his dog, and my dog was like about to die, and then they were holding me hostage for like $7,500. They were like, well, you can give us the money, or that's it. And Sean happened to be there, and it was like 3 a.m. He was like, hey, I really liked you from The Wire, and I was like, thanks, man. And then we started seeing each other around, and so he was like, hey, I'm gonna go do this movie about porn in the Valley called Starlit, which was with Dree Hemingway that we all won a couple of Independent Spirit Awards for. And then when he was like, I'm gonna make Tangerine, will you come? I was like, sure. And he was like, I'm going to shoot it on iPhones. And my whole thing was like, okay, well, I don't care what we shoot it on. Like, the last thing we worked on won a bunch of awards, so why would I think, do you know what I mean? Like whatever you're using is not, right. The director's the artist, right? Like the thing, the interface in which you the capture medium doesn't really matter. So when we filmed it It was rough. It was rough because it's like, it's like a 3-person crew. Everybody's fucking all over the place. We're shooting in non-locked off locations. So that donut time was still open.
Oh, wow.
Right? Yeah. And that's the donut time recently just closed. But that corner is like, there was like meth heads and bums like that were interrupting the shots so they could hustle money out of us so that they, because we'd be like, cut and, So it was total chaos.
It was that donut place. That's Santa Monica Boulevard
and Highland.
And that's near Hollywood Center Studios.
Is it? Yeah.
I think so. Oh, yeah, I've driven by there quite a few times. I know exactly where that is. Yeah.
But it was a huge pain in the ass?
It's just when you start to get like a rhythm going, when you're doing a scene and you have, dialogue to do, and even if it's not scripted, when the rhythm is interrupted, you're like, oh, that was a wasted take.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Why would they interrupt you? Just for money?
For money, and then also like people come and be like, "Can I get like an eclair?" You know what I mean? You're like, okay, like I guess we're gonna stop this now. Yeah.
But it would have cost too much to lock them off.
Yeah, it's weird though because again, back to my point about like who controls the content. Those are the risks. If you want to make something really interesting, like you are always going to be subject to the people that are paying for it. And more these days, they think they know what they're doing more than the artists do.
Right.
And when they say they're shot on iPhones, like, is it literally just a guy holding an iPhone, or are there iPhone rigs with all kinds of stuff on them?
Yeah, they sort of like just use the capture medium in a way where they were like, okay, well, if we're going to use this as a camera, don't we want to sort of like experiment with the lenses? And there were interesting things where there's Steadicam shots where you can get a thing called a smoothie that's the same technology as Steadicam. That basically suspends the phone in space, so there's not like a lot of you know what I mean. It's not shaky.
Right.
And then for like the boom shots, it would be that taped on the end of like a paint pole, right? And then Sean would actually ride for the tracking shots. He would ride on a bicycle holding it, right? Yeah. And then so there's extra lenses on it, but then you also run the actual footage through an app I think called Filmic Pro. I think that's the one it's called, and that way you can like lock color temperature, and you can lock the ISO, the shutter, and all that stuff. So
it was really interesting. There's a lot of walking and kind of frantic back and forth dialogue. It didn't look like an easy film to shoot.
Well, I think again, and this is also to Ty's credit in terms of going like, well, you like editing. I always find that really good filmmakers, the ones that like are making something interesting or you feel their voice in them, they also edit. You know what I mean?
Sean edited that, right?
Yeah, Sean edited that himself. So, like that's a real beauty in sort of why Sean Baker's movies are really good. I think because he started as an editor, so he knew how he was going to cut the whole thing together.
I'm a bad editor. I get married to stuff.
You don't want to let anything go?
No,
Everything's an epic with you?
Well, if you wrote something, it's hard to see it get cut and realize, wow, that's just not what I thought it was.
Yeah, it is true. It is
even
hard
in
to do
writing.
How long did the edit take? Because it didn't seem like it couldn't have taken too long to shoot, right? Because it was all
Yeah,
on
it was
the
a pretty
one
short shoot.
set
I think it was
for the most
20, 22, 23 days, which
Okay,
for a
so-
movie is really short. Like
Yeah.
that sounds like enough time, but if you say that number in front of like people who make movies, they're like, "What?"
So you
Right.
got you got 3 weeks to write the script. You got 3 weeks to shoot it.
Yeah. I had a little longer to edit it. It's about, we probably edited for 2.5 months, and then
So it's not like this thing where like you have to dedicate 2 years of your life to this project.
Well,
It's,
you do, but it's not as compartmentalized as that. So it has been 2 years since I wrote it. Like this, we'd be coming up on either 2 or 3 years. Yeah, busted.
No, it's been more. Well, it's actually been because we shot it in 2014. So it's actually been 3.
So we're coming up
No,
on
we're coming
3
up on
years
3 years to when you were
Christmas.
like, I'm going to go to New York and pitch this to Ethan.
Yeah. So
Wow.
then even
Wow.
once you edit the movie, but then it's a small movie, so the sound and music, the music is really great in this film, and the composer Jeff Grace, who's working with me a lot, he did it all himself for like nothing. So that takes forever, and you can't
Yeah.
really rush it along because everyone's doing you favors. So that
Right.
takes a long time. There's a really incredible dog in the film, and when you have to make all the dog bark sounds and all the paw, foot, that stuff takes forever.
That's what I was thinking. Is like I was thinking about you because obviously it's got an independent feel to it, and you as the writer and knowing you're going to be the director and want to be the editor. Like I feel like if I was writing a movie that I was going to do, I would want to make it as simple as possible. And like you watch, the dog does so much stuff in that. I'd be
Yeah.
like you have to find a trained dog that can do all this stuff.
Yeah, as soon as I sort of finished the script, I had this moment of like, oh shit, I wrote a movie where one of the main characters is a dog, which is they tell you is a horrible thing to do, like pets and animals and kids. Kids are worse. But,
Chimps are very hard to work with as well.
Yeah, they pull your face off.
Yeah, they're the worst. That was what the animal trainer was saying. He was like, they're literally the worst, most scary. That and bears. Bears are like they're the most unpredictable. Chimps and bears.
I did a pilot for MTV years ago where my co-host was a chimp. Not my proudest moment, or his.
You know what? I wouldn't be worried about this because we found this out the other night, which was my sort of suspicion. Is that do you know the highest grossing adjusted for inflation movie that Clint Eastwood has made as an actor? The biggest box office success.
Well, because you said him, I'm gonna have to say either Every Which Way But Loose or Any Which Way You Can.
1 and 2.
Wow.
Wow.
Yep.
That was an orangutan, Clyde.
Yeah.
Oh.
That was
My
actually
turn,
on
Clyde.
Doug Benson's podcast. We learned that, and Doug just texted me this morning to say hello. He's been listening.
Oh yeah, you've done the. That's right. In the thing, you've done his Doug Loves Movies.
Yeah, we did it the other night.
Did you? Oh, you both did. Did you guys win?
Taiwan. I came in second.
I did it with Morgan Spurlock, and of course he won. I did
Right.
shit. I do terrible on that fucking podcast.
I don't even remember. I've done it twice. I have no clue who won. I know I didn't win, but I don't remember who won.
Well, you and I were on one together.
Yeah, that's right. With
Morgan.
With Ron Bennington.
Oh, with Ron. Right.
Yes,
Ronnie.
yes.
Didn't Ronnie win it? And Esther Koo, who was terrible.
Yeah,
She knew none of it. Yeah.
I feel like Ron has a really good knowledge of movies.
He does.
He does, yeah.
But it's amazing how you panic. You think you have a good knowledge of movies, then in front of an audience, I panic.
You do?
And I'm comfortable in front of an audience, but just not picking out fucking obscure movie references. I'm like, I guess I've never seen
You do
that.
forget really obvious things.
Yeah.
Things you would know any other time of the day. You're just
Yeah.
like, I can't.
Apocalypse. I'm like, someday? No, bro. Fuck.
So what do you do then, like, when you're just sitting there like, okay, my part of this movie's done, now the sound guy has it. Like, you have to move on with your life or find ways to make money elsewhere? Or what do you...
Yeah,
what are you
it's-
working,
well,
figuring
making-
out what the next project is?
Making movies is a really traumatic thing, I feel. Like, so because it goes on for a very long time. And so, yeah, the sound guy's working on it, but it's not like I'm not involved. You know,
Right.
especially on something like this and something where the sound is very particular or the music's very particular. Like, I'm a freak like that. So I'm sort of up in their business the whole time. So it's hard to move on. I'll do an episode of a TV show. Now, I did a show called Wayward Pines. I'd go and do a couple episodes
Right.
of that, and that sort of like supplements the income.
Yeah.
And you know, that's fun, and you get a little break for that. And then you finish the movie. And then we premiered at South by Southwest, but we finished the movie months before that. So then you wait for that, and then you do that, and then we've been doing like a year of film festivals to promote the movie. But that's a year of the movie being done that it's not out, that you're traveling around promoting, like, you know. And then finally here we are, and it comes out Friday. But it's been, you know, it's a long time. So it's hard. You can't go do another movie because then you can't properly focus on this movie.
Totally.
Unless you're the kind of person who can, like, distance themselves from it. But when you like write, direct, edit, produce, it's
You're
hard.
attached to
Yeah,
it.
it's very much like it's a very personal thing for
You don't want to miss an opportunity to promote it or do something with it because you're off doing something else.
Yeah, and like with like Wayward Pines, for instance, I go there in 6 weeks. I'm done. Like
Right.
my whole role's done. My edit's turned in. They do whatever they want with it. See you guys later. Thanks.
And you
for the
don't
memories.
find yourself attached to
no,
it
not
at all. You're doing
Not
your
at all.
job.
It's their show. I'm just in helping out. You know?
When Ethan Hawke does Magnificent Seven, are you like, what the fuck? I had the Ethan Hawke Western. Like, how did this...
No, because he was so excited about doing westerns and he's like really well suited for it. So I think I just like to see more westerns in general. So because I'm a huge fan of the genre. So no, I think it's great. I mean, hopefully it just makes people. That movie did very well. So hopefully it makes people remember that westerns are cool and it highlights.
And it's a very different movie.
Yeah, it is very different.
Yeah.
But no, the more westerns, the merrier.
I like certain westerns, like Sergio Leone westerns.
Yeah.
I love. A lot of them I don't tend to like, but those
Yeah,
old
but-
ones are amazing.
But there's weird shit that I think falls under the category of westerns that we don't necessarily sort of like look at, you know? Like Thelma and Louise is a western too, you know?
Right.
In the sort of like most classic sense. Anything where you can pit the individual sort of like on the road somewhere in America, to me is always like a western. And in some ways, like Mad Max is a western. Do you know what I mean? Like the original ones.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the Road Warrior. It's
Yeah.
like that's just a different type of western.
Doesn't always have to be a showdown at the OK Corral.
No,
or
it's
something,
about
yeah.
like one moral person in like a completely fucking lawless society that is like left to sort of their own moral compass to decide what's right or wrong, you know?
Right.
And it's like usually in the desert. that's like I think that to me qualifies as a western.
Well, the desert, that's a good point. The desert is such an unforgiving, shitty place, too.
Yeah.
Like, nobody wants to be stuck in the desert.
Well, that's why that was sort of Ty and I were talking about this in an interview last week. It was like, why are we seeing this resurgence of the western? And it's like, well, because that's sort of like what it feels like right now, a fucking completely fucked up, lawless society where we're just in this total chaos, and each person feels like they're on some cowboy riding through some hellscape, you know?
Yeah, like I could absolutely see that way of life happening. Like that's where we're headed.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I don't like the old western. I like when I saw one with John Wayne recently. I was in the gym, obviously, and I'm working and I'm watching this, and I'm watching this on the treadmill, and it's fucking John Wayne. He gets shot. I forget which one it was, but he barely reacts. And it's like that. Those are the ones I don't really enjoy.
Right. I think if you like the sort of spaghetti westerns, the Sergio Leone's type stuff, I think this movie you dig, and I think I think people Travolta is like really, really great and really, really funny in the movie, and I think people are sort of surprised by that. But I think if you like that sort of dark sense of humor and that sort of black comedy from the spaghetti westerns, I think this movie is more, which makes it so different than something like Magnificent Seven or something like that.
Yeah, totally.
Which is a more traditional thing. This movie has like kind of like a wacky edge to it.
Yeah, the comedy does catch you off guard because like you end up like listening to these conversations that are happening in the middle of this. Like what?
Yeah, well,
what
the
fuck
hope
is going
with
on
the movie
right
is
now?
that it's like all these sort of archetypes that we're familiar with, and it sets up a story that's like not a surprising plot. You're like, okay, I kind of know where this is going. I know who these types of people are, and then when the shit hits the fan, all these characters that you think are going to react just like they always do in movies start reacting more like us or like people in real life.
Yeah, totally.
And so when the violence happens in this movie, everyone actually turns out to be in way over their head. So they all want the violence. They all talk shit. I mean, the whole movie starts because James is talking shit to Ethan, and he's trying to start a fight, and then Ethan beats him in a fight, and that starts the whole problem of the movie.
Right.
But that's kind of what the movie is the guy that talks the biggest shit that ends up getting knocked out, and then he can never let it go. And
And
how
it's a
everybody
funny
reacts
character
to
because
that.
he's kind of a wiener throughout the whole movie.
Yeah,
and
man, thanks.
but like, how do you? It's like, okay, here's the good news, James. You're going to be able to have your role in a western, but you're kind of a wiener who
Well, I
has
guess
trouble with
that's-
his fiance, and like you're one of the scenes is just like relationship problems.
I guess, like when Ty sent me the script, it's always more fun to play the bad guy because there's so much more that you can do. And then, I think it was like a couple of years ago, he's like, I really want to write to your strengths. And I think that just comes from doing The Wire. And now I'm like, yeah, I enjoy playing those villains, and it's great if somebody wants to pay me for it. It's just, I get bored of it. I get burnt out after a while. It's because it's boring, you know what I mean? Like, at a certain point, I'm
Playing
like,
the villain?
Yeah, or like playing that type of character, which is like an insecure person with like daddy issues. It's like, okay, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Maybe because you're good at it, but it's not easy to pull off, and you pull it off really well, and that's probably why you do it.
Thanks, man. But again, it's like, I think like with anybody, it's like you start to go like, wait, am I like a one-hit wonder sort of thing?
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I always, but like William H. Macy is like one of the great actors of all time, and he's kind of always cast as that like, he just didn't make it
A
loser
schmuck
guy.
who just missed.
I mean,
Yeah.
And to some degree, like Phil Hoffman a little bit too. He always looks like he just got done masturbating. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it just didn't quite work out.
But the first time I saw William H. Macy, and it might have been his first major thing, was in House of Games. That Mammoth movie, when he plays the guy that they fucking take advantage of in the bus station or whatever. He's just such a great schmuck.
Yeah, he really is.
But I bet if you pressed him on, you'd probably feel the exact same way. Like
I'm
I
sure-
don't want to be the schmuck every time.
No, I'm sure he does, and I'm sure that's why a lot of guys who are like journeymen, they like to go do theater because they like to, it's like you start to get paid. I think again because we work in an industry that has zero imagination. So it's like, okay, well, if this is going to pay for my livelihood, I guess this is like what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But then where do I sort of, expand creatively elsewhere? And I think that's why you'll see a lot of all the actors that I really respect will all do theater in their off time.
Do you do theater?
Yeah, yes. I've started to in the last couple of years, but it's usually got to be a very specific material that I respond to because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I'm reading this. I probably should prepare better. Did you really stop a rape in 2006?
Yes.
How did you do that?
Fisticuffs.
So do you want the full story?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a pretty interesting thing. I mean, we've never heard that story before.
So it's ridiculous. I am like a ex-heroin addict, and at 2006, I was on a lot of heroin, and I was living in my apartment, this like shit box on Allen Street and Broome, and I was watching TV with my then girlfriend at the time, and I was like in just pajama bottoms. And it was like April and it was raining a little bit. And I hear this scream for help, right? Or I hear this commotion downstairs, and I ran down, and it was literally at the landing of the stairs. There's like 2 double doors, or there's double doors in New York. And in the sort of hallway vestibule between the doors was I could see my upstairs neighbor pinned down on the ground face up, and this guy was like trying to rape her basically. And so I ran back upstairs just to the landing, and I went inside. I told my girlfriend, I was like, listen, lock yourself in here, call the police, like tell the cops to come right now, like on heroin, right? And so I run downstairs and I open the door, and she's on the ground and the guy has left, and I grab a metal pipe because I'm in a fucking building in Chinatown, so there's just shit everywhere, right? So I grab this metal pipe and I run out the landing, and there's nobody on the street, and I look north and I look south, and there's this guy on Allen Street, and he's running south, and I'm like, oh, this is the motherfucker, right? So I'm there, I'm like 115 pounds soaking wet, like, in pajama bottoms, and I'm like, hey, motherfucker, like, are you trying to rape my neighbor? And he turns around, and he mimes having, like, a gun in his sweatshirt pocket, and he goes, I'm the police, and I'm like, fuck you, and I hit him with this metal bar, right? And he fights me, and he takes off running, and I go after him. He bolts into some apartment, like, a housing complex, like just, I think like, near Allen and Grand, and he slams my arm in the door. Yeah, and I smash the glass with this pipe because I'm trying to get a hold of him, and I slip because it's wet, and so I end up like serrating my entire chest in broken glass. So I basically look like Iggy Pop, right?
Wow.
And the cops show up, and they think I'm the rapist because I'm like a junkie, like covered in blood, right? And I'm like, no, it's the other guy. And so what happened was they picked him up, I think, a couple hours later, and then I had to go like pick him out of a lineup and then testify against him in court. I don't know what ended up happening, but that's the story.
So when you hit him with the pipe, where'd you hit him?
Like in the shoulder,
Okay.
It wasn't like I'm not some super skilled
trying to kill him,
Steven
right?
Seagal. No, I mean I'm also like like what is a 115-pound junkie with a pipe actually going to do to you?
By the way, how slow is he that the guy on heroin caught him?
Yeah. So that's the story.
That's pretty ballsy to chase him down
That's
like that.
super ballsy. How did you kick heroin?
I went to rehab. I mean, I had a pretty bad bottom, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad.
And that was after The Wire, which 2006. That was a couple
Yeah,
years
so
after.
what people don't understand is they were like, you're so good at playing a junkie, and it was like, no, I didn't actually start doing heroin until after The Wire. Like, I was a drunk when I was filming The Wire, but then the way I got into it was I took a lot of prescription pills, so... and that's and I have like a real weird drugstore cowboys story where I would like steal scripts from doctors, forge them under different names, and put them all over the city, and pick them up from Dwayne Reed's under fake names. And then I ended up feeling like one of my friends went to jail for that and went to Rikers, and I was like, this is too sketchy. You know what's a real sensible move is to go to heroin because that's like it's cheaper and it's an easier thing to get a hold of. So. That's
and you don't have to forge anything.
Yeah, no, it's and then because I've been clean for like 10 years, and it's weird when I think about it now, and I think about how I got hooked on pills, and then looking at the pharmaceutical industry, I'm like, no, they're just drug dealers that somehow legitimized it. It's like I wear a white coat. It's like, yeah, but this is still heroin.
How'd you do it under fake names? I'm amazed with no ID and stuff. They weren't asking for as much ID.
It was probably like a different time, I mean, this was, I think, before it really got into sort of like the cultural zeitgeist of like how and like because I remember cleaning up and. A couple of years after that, it was like all those Florida pain clinics. They were like, okay, this is really unethical what's happening.
Right.
Are those still around, those Florida pain clinics?
No, I mean, I don't know, man. I see so many people still strung out on Oxycontin, though. It's like, they just figured out a way to hide it.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Rock seemed to have a very easy time getting Vicodin on Ballers. So...
Yeah.
Everything goes back to wrestling.
Everything goes back to Ballers.
Ballers. Yeah. That's where I get my life lessons from.
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Well, it's a great show. Terrific show.
Yeah.
Well, listen, the movie's great. In a Valley of Violence. It's in theaters and on demand this Friday. And I would recommend everybody see it. And it's even cooler that, like, it's actually a project that a person and people did. Like, it's not this big kind of conglomerate thing. It's like Ty went and wrote and directed and edited, and James was in it, and Ethan Hawke and John Travolta. It's,
Playing a wiener, according to you.
kind of a
I
wiener.
know. Why
He
would
was-
you say it like that?
Well, he's
I
kind of a
know.
wiener. The character.
That's still not the way.
It's
to
also
phrase
where
it.
the dog that's
Thanks,
in his name
Jim.
is Jumpy, and I would recommend anyone Google Jumpy because there's probably only one dog on planet Earth that can do what Jumpy can do. And if you check I found Jumpy by Googling talented dogs, and he was the first one that came up. And I mean, he can skateboard. And when I say skateboard, I don't mean like kind of. I mean, he can go in a half pipe and go up and come back down.
I can't even do that.
Not like
like a
that
trick
stupid
that Jumpy
bulldog that
does.
could just go forward.
There's a trip that he'll have 5 people stand like 4 feet apart and pick numbers between 1 and 10, and they'll like 2, 6, 8, and he'll go Jumpy, go to 6, and he'll go and put his paw on the foot of the person who's at 6.
Oh my god!
And you know the when you make a movie with a dog, you think this is gonna be really hard. You put a mark down just like you would for an actor, and you go Jumpy, go to your mark, and he goes and puts his paws on the marks and stays there until you say cut. Like it was the easiest thing. It's incredible. I've never experienced anything like it, and the dog is really like there's a lot of really special YouTube. Like he can paint and sign his name.
He's amazing.
It's wild. Yeah.
He's amazing, and he's good in the movie too. He's
it's
a
great-
good.
yeah.
He's a good movie dog.
And it's a transgender role. He plays a girl in the movie.
oh
Does he?
wow! Yeah.
Oh, nice.
We're
Yeah, that's
breaking
very
a lot of new ground.
very forward thinking of you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
take
it
that
is.
tangerine.
Yeah.
Oh shit, this bitch got a dick.